Hey, I'm back. I got a new phone this time, so you can actually hear me. Hopefully, um, been thinking a lot. I'm turning 30 in a few weeks. I don't know how many. I don't keep count anymore. And I figured it would be helpful, useful, something to talk a little bit about the last decade of my life, reflect on it, get some goals for the next decade coming up, and yeah, just kind of things like that. It's easy to get sentimental when you hit big things like this. And right now I'm sitting 8 years ago, I believe, maybe even nine. I don't remember. At some point, you stop counting. Um, I remember I was looking at this place with my buddy Gabe, and we found this big rock outcropping that looked over the pond into a big open area. And we call it the Rock now, obviously, because it's a big rock looking over it, really beautiful outcropping. And I see everything that we've done. Because the barn's right there, pasture's right there. I can see his old house. It's kind of crazy. It really is. And I think it would be a good idea to talk about my 20s, what I hope happens in my 30s, and just the future. Because time's always marching. Time's always fucking marching, whether you want it to or not. And believe me, there's been plenty of points in my life where I wish it would just stop and stay there, but it doesn't. It just keeps going. This one's probably not going to be super Well, nah, it's a little optimistic. I'm not going to say it's not optimistic, but I'm going to be pretty real. If you're not into hearing real shit, probably should just leave. Um, I've had a weird fucking life, man. So reflecting on it usually ends up being a little. You get a mixture of everything. That's why I'm a duelist. A duelist like from Yu-Gi-Oh. No, but anyways, fuck. There goes the whole fucking video. Um, so I remember it's kind of crazy, back when I was 17 years old, I didn't really understand philosophy or ethics or morality or really anything like that. And I started out thinking I was a pretty good person, right? I'm a pretty good guy. Um, I've never done anything bad, seriously. And I want the best for people. So, clearly, I'm not a bad person, but life's complicated. Like I said, I've tried to the best of my conviction to do many things that are just in my perspective and the perspective of God and the perspective of many different religions that I've followed. Many, many. You know what I mean? And I sit here at the precipice of the middle of my life, where I still have the energy to change things, and I'm not quite beaten down by the rhythm of it all. And I was really hoping things would make more sense by this point in my life. I really was. I've always been, especially as an adult, I've been of a mind to appreciate philosophy, to think about things and think about why things are the way that they are. And I should know better because I talk to so many old people. But the more you learn, the more you see, the less everything makes sense. I have a relatively solid metaphysical conviction at this point that informs my perspective on ethics in a way that I'm still thinking about. Um, Mainly that despite everything that I try to do, despite the good that I try to do in the world, it is impossible to do good without doing evil. And I'm still wrestling with that idea. It's we as humans like to think that when we do good, it is it's not unequivocal. What am I thinking? What's the word? It's without fault. When we are when we sacrifice, when we try to do the best that we can for others, when we try to live up to the ideals that we would like to, we like to think that it ultimately is objectively good, but it is not. Even with the most pure heart, just by the nature of the world that we live in, when you do good, you also do evil. I wrestle with this because I really wish it wasn't true. I really wish that was not the case. I really wish the world was not this way. Because, obviously, being a person that seeks after the best for people, you'd think that doing good would make the world better. But it doesn't. And I know this in my own life. When things are too good for me, I tend to self-destruct. I tend to be very, how do you put it? Unappreciative, I guess. Just tend to not see things in the way that they ought to be, in the beauty of the world that I know is there. It's not the same. I'm looking at this beautiful vista in this beautiful place at this beautiful time of year, and it's just not the same. It's not the same. There's in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon warns you not to be overly wise. I'm not saying I'm wise, I'm not, but thinking is all well and good, pondering after what is good and what is evil and all that bullshit. What good did it do me? It's a matter of, in the last 10 years of my life, I have changed so much fundamentally as a person, but I still wrestle with the same fundamental problems. I still fear intimacy in a serious way that is just showing itself more as I get older. I fear emoting. I don't really know. I don't know if it's fear, but it's it's like a combination of the way I grew up and all that shit. There's some cool yellow birds out there. Those are actually really cool. I don't know what those were. Anyways, for most of my life, people have been relying on me. I haven't really had much of a recourse or a choice, and I just do what is necessary. And in a way, it's made me very dependable, very reliable. All that. It's not a mistake. Well, that's a different question. It's not surprising that I've ended up in the position I'm in now, where I'm very financially stable and I'm not really worried about anything materially, but the glimmer and the beauty that once characterized my perspective of the world is pretty much eroded. Alcohol definitely did a good amount of that. If you're a man and you think, hiding your emotions and never being true is a manly virtue, it's not. What is manly is being able to function when things are difficult. And I'm great at that. The problem is, it's so easy, especially when you're like me, to think that the best way to do that is just to kind of be more or less the same almost all the time, and just never really let anything get to you. Never really let anything serious that should have real impacts on your personality or psychology affect you. And it's I think, obviously I've been an alcoholic since about the age of 19, 18. I don't remember. It's been too long. It's kind of an insane thing, and it brings me a lot of shame to consider the fact that I genuinely cannot think of a time in my life at this point because of how fucked my brain is, how fucked my memory is. I can't think of a time in my life where I was not addicted to alcohol. Obviously I have memories of me being a child, but this has been such a pervasive force in my life for so long that it may as well have just always been there, even though it hasn't. It's corrupted my mind and my memory and my perception in such a profound degree that I literally can't imagine my life without it. And it's so fucked. It's so fundamentally fucked. And one of my greatest follies, and what has led to the greatest error that I continue to perpetuate as an individual, was, and this is I'm not gonna point the finger at anyone other than myself because it's ultimately my problem at this point. This is still an issue. But the way I was raised, the way that I came up, became a man, and did everything that I did, was under the notion that really how you feel doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. There are things that have to get done. There are people relying on you. No one gives a shit what you actually feel or think or anything like that. And I feel like that's why, making these videos and doing everything I did, and coming out here and doing everything that I've done has been so cathartic. But at the same time, I feel like that's the reason that I've ultimately ended up being in the same position that I was at, before I left here, 22, 23, however old I was, and am now broaching 30. And basically in the same man I was before. I'm wearing different clothes and I'm looking a little different, But, there's the same problems, the same issues, the same fundamental strengths and weaknesses that I had coming here are still here. I've changed a lot, I've learned a lot, and I've grown a lot. But I would not necessarily say that the man that I am now is fundamentally different from the man that came here. And that's really the danger of hiding your emotions. Or in my case, I just don't really feel emotions very strongly. It's a combination of the two. One feeds on the other. When I was very socially anxious, I was very afraid of people catching on to how I felt. So how I dealt with that was essentially ignoring it, hiding it, trying to pretend it wasn't there. Never went away. I just got really good at fucking pretending it wasn't there. And, my dependence on alcohol ultimately is supporting that thing, supporting that idea. And at this point, I've done so much and I've seen so much and I've met so many people, and it's really like, again, I'm looking out at this whole fucking chapter of my life. Really the summation of everything that I was as a child, what, turned me into an adult, and ultimately what led me to do what I did here. And just ultimately, it's a beautiful thing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I can't believe how little I've progressed emotionally as a person. I've done incredible things. I've done shit that you wouldn't believe. Things I didn't even think were fucking possible. I've made an impact on a lot of different people's lives, and I feel like ultimately, like I said, it's I've done a lot of that shit, but you know, when it comes to me as me as a person, you know, I may as well be 18 years old still. You know, that the way that I cope with reality, things that I dislike, emotions, strong emotions, it's all the same, and it's all been the same. It just happens to be that the method and mechanism that I used to do it was so functional that I was able to get to this point without it really interfering with my life as a whole. And I guess to kind of turn it to a more positive spin, you know, I want my 30s to be an exploration of why that is, what that means, because I need to fundamentally change as a person, or I'm gonna be so fucked, dude. Like, if I keep drinking myself the way that I drinking myself, you know what I mean? If I keep drinking the way that I have been, I'm gonna be dead. I don't know, 60, 50, 70, who knows? I'm not God. I don't make those decisions. But it ain't doing me any good. I was blessed with very good health. I was blessed with a healthy and productive body and plenty of energy. And my routine abuse of alcohol over the last 12-ish years of my life has started to bear itself in ways that I can begin to see. And, you know, being the way that I am, I talk to a lot of people that are alcoholics. Obviously, you know, you go to bars, it's the kind of people you meet and see. And, you know, their 30s, you know, everything's fun and games when you're in your 20s. In your 30s, if you're still acting the way that you did in your 20s and you were a piece of shit, which I am, you're going to pay for it. And while I have a very low self-perception, and I do hate myself to an extent, and I don't really want to get into that, that's all part of what I'm hoping to resolve in my 30s. I will hate myself more if I let myself become ill and die because of my actions, especially considering the incredible fortune and luck that I've had in my life. You know, I really couldn't have asked for anything better, and the fact that I deal with the self-loathing and all that shit that I do is just so fucking stupid. You know, you go back far enough, you know, it makes sense. It's just like the lack of personal growth and reflecting on these things ultimately has hindered me in that way where, again, even though I'm functioning very well as an adult, contributing to society, I'm still that fucking same insecure piece of shit back when I was fucking 17 or 18 years old. You know, really, it's kind of nuts when you really think about it. I feel like a lot of people feel this way, but it is strange to be in the position I'm in now, commanding the authority that I do, and you know, essentially being leaned on by so many people, but still being fundamentally the same person I was before, because for whatever reason it was expedient. It worked. You know, most people are forced to change because the way that they are doesn't work. I think the greatest curse, and you know, the one that God has cast on me, that I am constantly wrestling with, is I could probably do this until I eventually die of liver failure or whatever the fuck, but it would be a waste of a life. You know, I think Socrates said it best: is, you know, an unexamined life is not worth. I forget what he said. It's either not worth living or a tragedy. Both are true. And you know, it's a shame that someone that has thought about all this shit as much as I have has not applied any of it in a way that actually fucking matters, because I'm stuck, as I've said in several videos, but have never really been able to express well. The hand of pragmatism forces everything else that you would aspire to or would wish to be, or all of that. You know, I know so many men. I know so many people, men especially, but people, that get to the middle of their lives or the end of their lives and they realize, I should have fucking learned more. I had the opportunity and I saw enough to know and have learned more than I did. But I just kept going. I just kept doing the thing that I was doing because it was comfortable and it made sense and it was familiar. That was the reason I came out here, was because I didn't want to end up like that. And I still did. I still did. And the reasons for that are complicated and probably outside of the scope of this video. And I'm not really interested in talking about it because it's a whole mixture of reasons. You want to play the blame game, pointing fingers. It's everybody's fault. It's my fault. It's everybody I know's fault. It's the fault of the way the world is. It is what it is. Something you learn the longer you're around, especially when you're trying to, like, if you're fucked in the head like I am, most people are, if you're honest, understanding why something doesn't solve the problem. You can fucking think about all this shit until you're blue in the face and you think you understand the world, but just because you understand why you're fucked in the head doesn't fix it. It doesn't. And I think that's, in my 30s, I want to figure out what all of this means. I want to figure out why, fundamentally, I've essentially been the same person for, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I'd say since I was 18, but basically for the last, like, fucking 8 or 9 years. And if I'm going to actually break the cycle and do something beautiful and worthwhile, and something that's actually worth emulating or learning from, it's going to come from the revelations that I have in this decade of my life. As my strength wanes and my body begins to seriously age, and I am confronted with the middle of life and the loss of strength and capacity, both mentally and physically, which I'm already dealing with. I gave myself manic depression by drinking too much. My buddy Adam, that I met, that's living here now, he had a similar thing with smoking too much marijuana, so I know I'm not making it up. You know, he has the same fucking thing. And it was very, it felt good to talk to somebody that understands what that is, because I'm not used to being incapacitated by emotions, because I'm not used to really feeling or processing emotions. But I think it's interesting, again, God has a very interesting sense of humor. The fact that it ultimately ends up crippling you anyways. The more you ignore it, the more it ends up just sitting there building. And eventually it fucking gets you anyways. So don't ignore it. You got something to deal with, fucking confront it head on. Because the more you ignore it, the more you try to bury it, the more it's just going to fuck with you. The more it's going to affect you later on. The more you're going to hate yourself because you're going to have to fucking deal with it after it's been wedged in you. It's like a fucking seed. It just keeps growing and growing and growing, and fuck, man. I need to eventually stop drinking alcohol because I have no way of controlling myself when it comes to that, and it has done pretty much no good for me. All of the short-term benefits that it has afforded me have been supplanted by the long-term negative effects. The manic depression that I'm now dealing with, where, days where I'm seriously depressed, I literally barely can function. The destruction of my endocrine system, which I don't even know if I want to talk about that, but and all of the ancillary stupid shit that comes with that. If I don't manage to change that in this next 10 years of my life, I'm basically fucked. And, that's, if I can't figure that out by then, stop listening to me. Don't heed anything that I have to say. My life would have been a complete waste by that point. Everything that I would try to have accomplished, if I can't figure that out by the time I'm 40, May as well have just not fucking existed in the first place. For a man to be that stupid, you know, to even be given the gift of language, why? What the fuck did it mean? What did it matter? Sorry for being so negative, but it's been a fucking insane year. I don't know. If you're in your 20s, if you're in your mid, late, early 20s, please think about what you're doing. Think about the conscious and unconscious habits that you have. Think about your time. Think about what you're doing, what's getting done. Think about not just those measurable things, because that's the error that I made, was only focusing on those measurable things. Are you growing as a person? You know, are you fundamentally changing? Are you coming to a greater understanding of the world and ultimately your place in it? Because if you don't figure that out, why even get out of bed? Why even do anything? You know, that's the demon I'm wrestling with right now. It's just homeostasis is so easy. It's so easy to just go on and just keep going, because it's easier to keep going than to not keep going. But time's a terrible thing to waste. It's a platitude, but fuck, it's true. I genuinely hope the next 10 years of my life are going to be productive and beneficial, and I'll be able to come to terms with these things and understand it on a more real and fundamental level. I'm glad I'm in the position I'm in now, but in terms of growth, I'm less concerned about the farm, and I'm more concerned about my own perspective and my own wrestling with life at this point. Because if I can't figure that out, none of this means anything. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Existential 30-year-old thoughts. Have a good day.